And all right, we are live. Boy, today I am excited as can be. I always say that, but I have to really embellish that today because I'm fortunate to have a really just a top of the line expert in the industry, and we're going to learn a lot here today about him and what he does, but also some strategies and also some techniques that you can apply for yourself. Clearly, there's a whole journey behind this young man here, Lukas Resheske. Welcome. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you nailed it. You got it. Thanks. I'm happy to be here. This is fun. I'm glad that we're on Facebook Live. It's a new and different experience. So,
very cool.
Are we going to be able to see chat? Is this like live?
Yes. In fact,
okay.
Let's see. Nobody has entered anything yet, but yeah, we'll be able to see it. It pops up automatically, actually.
Awesome.
So that's very cool. And what I'm going to do here, Lukas, is I'm going to just start off really quick here. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk a lot about you, but just to learn a little bit about you, I know that we just met recently through a mutual friend, Lewis Congdon, who also, by the way, has a great podcast out there. What I wanted to learn is a little bit more about you. And I had put up a post essentially inviting folks here today to learn about what I call the $100 million man. And that's kind of the sort of the headline for this today. And as you know, in this world, the first step is attention, right? And so we want to start there. But if you could just break down a little bit what we mean by that, or what you mean by that. I obviously have some notes from you, but please go ahead, Lukas.
Yeah, so that number comes from working with, I think now over 175 different clients for copywriting purposes. And those are individual clients. I've done multiple projects within those. And then prior to, I guess during the process of working with them, I also was responsible for coaching right around 2,000 business owners for a couple different entrepreneurs. One of them you might know is Ryan Levesque. I was part of his Ask Coaching program and inside his group and coaching those people. So a big part of my, I guess, entrepreneurial career has been helping these online business owners at various stages of their growth. And so as a copywriter, I write their copy, I build the launches, I build the VSLs and webinars and the advertorials and all this kind of stuff. And as a coach, I help them build the strategy. I help them build their email list. I help them build the initial offer. And so it's just a lot of time in the trenches with different types of people. And then over time was able to produce quite a lot of results for quite a lot of people.
That is an impressive background. And Lukas, what was it that sort of, if we go back a little bit before that, that sort of started this journey for you? We were talking a little bit about my days at Yahoo and going from tech, advertising, etc. Break that down a little bit, because I think that journey is going to be just really interesting for others to perhaps try and mirror or go that route for some of the up and comers.
For sure. I think my journey is interesting because I didn't start out to be in marketing or a copywriter or any of this. I thought for the first 19 years of my life, right, from when I was born to like halfway through college, I thought I was going to be a career military officer because my dad was in the Air Force. He got out as a captain. My mom retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. Lots of my family were in the Army and in the Marine Corps and in the Air Force and some in the Navy. So I was born and bred to be a military brat.
I see.
And a couple things happened in college where I realized that wasn't the career that I wanted anymore or that I was going to do anymore. And one of them was meeting my now wife and realizing I didn't want to be deployed for half of our marriage. And the other half was just kind of realizing that I didn't know what was going to happen after the Army. Like I never really thought about it. It was always just this thing that I was going to do because that was part of my life for so long. And the short version, I guess, is I had nothing else planned. I didn't have any, like deep hobbies. I didn't have any like passions outside of, going through the ROTC program in college and getting my commission and being an officer. So very quickly had to find out not only a way to have a career in the future, but also like what the heck I was going to do with my life. And luckily my dad had exposed me a little bit to this online world of marketing and business. I had seen Mark Ford and Craig Ballantyne with the Early to Rise newsletter. I had gotten exposed to Yannick Silver with his Underground seminar, and basically spiraled into this world of online marketing, business, copywriting, traffic, all of that kind of stuff. And just from the ground up, like pretty much ground my way up from there. There's a lot of backstory, but it's kind of, I don't want to bore your listeners.
Right. No, but that's very interesting. And sort of as you look at that, was there a pivotal moment where, like, you had sort of these transitions happening, but was there a moment where you said, I had a success with this client, or I had a breakthrough where I'm like, I think I can really take this to the next level? What was that moment, or was there several perhaps?
Yeah, there were several. So the first moment was the what else do I do with my life moment. And then going in the direction of someone who has completely open eyes and not a whole lot of experience doing anything else. I wasn't going to go work construction or, something like, I didn't have a fallback. So that was the first moment. The second one I would say is I got my first real job with the Elevation Group, a company run by Mike Dillard. And I basically got to mentor under him and his business partner, Robert Hirsch, for for a while, and wrote some copy for them, but it was more in the internal, for the lessons of their programs, for summaries and all that kind of stuff. And was told not only by Mike, but also by their lead copywriter, that I had a knack for the writing, but I had never trained in it. And so that was another pivotal shift. They're like, hey, a little bit of encouragement, like, hey, you're pretty good at this. Like, maybe you should keep trying. And then after I was done working with them, I got a couple other gigs doing traffic, whether it was Facebook ads or AdWords research. And so each of these little steps along the way were little moments of, okay, you got this, but why? Okay, you got this, but why? And every one of those led me along the path to eventually realize that the art of copywriting and the science of copywriting was the skill to master. And at that point, it became what I would call the journey to mastery, which is this consistent up-leveling of skill that never stops.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So it's obviously sort of getting in with the right people and mentorship sort of through actually doing. And even though you were considered sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, with the expression is, it's like, I'm this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And as you're thinking back to those moments and as you're progressing, is there anything that you think you would have done differently obviously this is sort of looking back, but could you have gone faster? Was there anything where you're like, oh man, I spent way too much doing a certain thing or a certain aspect of that you could have just kind of bolted through faster?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I see the times where I wasted time and procrastinated. I see times where I went down a rabbit hole I shouldn't have because I was looking after something. But on the one hand, those are learning experiences that I think everybody has to go through. It's really difficult. Yeah. One of the things I'm realizing actually, and you would appreciate this because you're a marketer and a lot of marketers will be watching this. There's a big hoopla about the 80-20 rule, right? And where 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. That's really sexy to talk about. But what people don't realize is that the 80-20 rule primarily is a lag indicator. You look back in history and identify what your 80 of the 20 was. Yeah. But you don't get that unless you did 100. And so a big part of identifying what works and what doesn't is going through that messy process of not knowing. And so I wouldn't necessarily change anything that I did. But if I could go back and identify the exact moments, I would say start on copywriting sooner, because that's a skill that doesn't change. There's principles behind it that you can keep getting better at, rather than something like traffic on Facebook. They change all the time. The TOS changes, their company changes, the ad costs go up. Different industries are banned or brought back. And, so it's a difficult skill to master because it keeps changing. If I could change one thing, it would be to go back and tell myself to focus on copywriting sooner.
Very interesting. And also just in line with that for a moment, how much of it do you think you would have changed in terms of because you hear a lot of folks talking about copywriting or talking about advertising or Facebook ads, and there's the classic sort of talking head salesperson, which might be a sort of a brand ambassador to a particular company or a particular individual, but they don't really know too much, but they've read a bunch of books. Like, so for instance, Scientific Advertising and Breakthrough Advertising, Eugene Schwartz, etc. I mean, how much, reading versus doing. And, there was, I think it was Halbert that talked about, if you want to learn copywriting, go to the best ones, like the, the American Express letter that ran for 20 years or something. Write that down 10 times and start to get this sucked into your mind through actually not typing, but, actually pencil to paper and read the books and catch up with that. And then you'll be great, right? I mean, there's obviously a balance there, but how much of that reading did you do versus actually doing, like these books that I just mentioned, for example?
So I've read all the books. I've done a lot of the programs that were created by what I would call the modern masters. The guys like Ben Savenga and Carlton and, those names that most copywriters will recognize, Halbert. Right. That's good for creating this like general idea of what copywriting is and what's possible with it. But without actually doing the work of putting words on a piece of paper or putting words into the internet and trying to convert someone, you don't know if any of that knowledge clicked, because you might know that a good headline needs to capture attention. You'll read the 12-step template that David Frey's got up right there. Yeah, John Caples. Yeah. You can read that book and still not know what to do in the context of an active offer. And because you are looking at it historically, you're looking at previous success. You don't understand the context. And you don't understand how they got to the success. Like copywriters, and I'm one of them, we like to talk about our wins, but we don't like to talk about the process of achieving that win. It's great when you knock something out of the park. It's not great when it doesn't work right away and you have to iterate 10 times and then it works. So I think there's a disconnect between all this knowledge that has been put out, which is fantastic, and the ability to synthesize it and put it out into context and get results from it. And I mean, I'm not trying to make a plug here, but basically that's what my mentorship does, because I take those like concepts and I make people do them over and over and over again until it like clicks in their mind of, oh, that's what they mean by getting attention. That's what they mean by the levels of awareness, or the sophistication of a marketplace. I mean, it's all, it's very difficult to translate knowledge into tangible action without any real world experience.
Right. Yeah, because I know we all get sucked into, the shiny object syndrome, and, another book, another, Audible or download. And, I often will say, hey, catch some of that, but just get friggin' to it, Learn by failing.
and the real value comes from rereading those books, not reading them the first time.
Yes, that's a great point.
I've read Breakthrough Advertising probably 7 or 8 times at this point. And that's like cover to cover. And I constantly go back. And so every time you read it, you get something new, as long as you're doing stuff. If I write one letter and then I go back to it and I realize, oh, I could have made that letter better, maybe we'll do it different with this next client, then that's where the real learning comes from, with especially all of these books, because these guys didn't write bad books, but they wrote very nuanced, experienced books. And a lot of the stuff that they wrote about only gets uncovered after you've really been in it for a while.
Yeah. I know this circles around on the internet as well as, what would Ogilvy have done today with the power of the internet and have available? You can only imagine. But I think what I answer that with is, well, what he did then. It's human psychology, human nature hasn't changed since Caesar, right? So it's like, yes, all the nuances that you talked about and the differentiation has to be there. The 80-20 rule, I love that kind of thinking of the 100% and then go back, the 20-10 for reading these books. That's a great thing. What are some of the things that sort of thinking about a beginner here, maybe in a services oriented model, like we basically provide advertising services, but what would be 2-3 things out the gate that somebody should start thinking about to write copy? I mean, obviously we're talking about, anything from a full-on sales letter. We have VSLs, we have advertorials, there's direct mail obviously out there. There's, snippets of ads running in Facebook. There's, videos that you can use on Facebook now, which of course can be sequenced. And there's just so many different strategies and models, but just sort of basic copywriting principles. How would you list that out to help somebody get going?
So everything that you just listed, I would qualify as a tactic. And this is coming from a military background. In my mind, there's a hierarchy. There's principles, strategies, and tactics, right? Principles don't change. And if they do change, they change at a glacial pace, because they're rooted in human behavior. Strategies are relatively constant, but they can change with the circumstance and with like the times. Tactics are daily. Tactics change in the moment. So if we're looking at it from the standpoint of combat, right? The principles is how you wage war, how you train troops. The strategies are what type of environment you're in and what type of war you're fighting. And then the tactics are how you squeeze a trigger, how you move troops, and how you position yourself, that sort of thing. From a marketing standpoint, it's important to separate the idea of, sequencing Facebook ads for watch audiences as a tactic rather than a strategy or a principle to try to apply. Like a business owner shouldn't try to apply the sequencing Facebook tactic if it's not relevant to their principle or their strategy. So to bring it all back home and take it down from 30,000 feet, for a small agency like yours, looks like your face froze. No, you're good. For a small agency, one of the biggest things I see is a lack of niching down and a lack of focus on a specific outcome. So when you can do a lot for a lot of people, it's difficult to choose exactly what you're going to do for a specific type of person. But the power counterintuitively comes from doing that. So an agency that runs traffic could very easily be a lead generation service for lawyers in Norway. That's it, period. We will get phone calls for lawyers in Norway. That's it. Right. And you could build a multi-million-dollar business off of that one thing. And that's obviously using one of the well-known niches. There's plumbers, there's roofers, there's contractors. In the online space, there's generating emails for affiliate marketers. There's, running advertorials for physical products and on native advertising. There's so many different niches that I think people don't adequately dig down into, which would be one of the principles that I would talk about, like knowing exactly who your target market is and being okay with that being a small fraction of what it could be, my camera's over here, could be, but usually isn't if you try to go too broad with too many people. So does that make sense? I'm trying to connect the tangible, usable info with the high level principle and strategy.
Yeah, and in fact, Lukas, I really like that. The idea that you get into the tactics is often what business owners do quickly. And hey, the latest sort of, like you talked about the videos there. But wait a second, we need to pull back the principles, the strategies, the tactics. It's the right way to approach it rather than, actually, interestingly enough, when I was thinking about this, how to ask you, what are some of the things that they should start with? Well, you outlined it in these three top level sort of, buckets. And then within that, of course, there's a lot of research, the targeting of the audiences, of course, the idea of just going into legal lead generation for lawyers in Norway. That's exactly where it needs to be. But at the same time, people get, a lot of messages out there in the marketplace of what to do, not to do. And they tend to go very broad. It's like, hey, I can provide a service for anybody under the sun. If you breathe, that's good. Come on in, right? Right. I was just talking to a friend in South Africa today about this, and it's the wrong way to go. And you kind of emphasize that. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, and I would say even, because a lot of people can snipe at the specifics of saying that,
Right.
I would say that it's not the wrong way to go. It's the extraordinarily slow and painful and potentially failure-ridden way to go. You can make it work. There are plenty of businesses who've started super broad and then by force of personality or brand or just getting the right client at the right time made it work. But it's not a good strategy. It's like throwing meat at the target, trying to make it work. That's not the smartest way to go about it.
Yes. Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's how I would frame it.
No, that's good. I like it. Very, very cool. Yeah, and actually, as we kind of drill in here, this is really cool, Lukas. I always tend to ask because we talked a little bit about the past, obviously, in terms of the books and the previous noted experts in the field, and the hands-on work. We sort of talked about these layers of strategy and tactics and principles. Actually, tactics, strategies, and principles at the top. And when we think about all of this, we always get back to, okay, Lukas, in current day, right now, 2019, what are you working on and what seems to be working best? I mean, we talked about the principle, these approaches, but is there anything that you'd like to call out in what you're working on now and that you like to sort of focus on in all your work today?
Yeah. So I will say that conventional internet marketing strategies, we're talking about funnels, webinars, product launches, email marketing, autoresponders, lead magnets, those sort of things. Like, if you went to Digital Marketer and listened to Ryan Deiss, you would hear about most of them very quickly, right? The standard tactics, those work. They work. They are successful in acquiring leads and customers and sales and increasing lifetime customer value. They work, right?
Right.
With the caveat that it is getting harder to implement every single one of them successfully, especially in more sophisticated marketplaces, and not at as low cost as it used to be. Which means, when I say harder, I mean your copy and your design and your branding has to be better, just better. If it's a sophisticated marketplace, it has to be even better. You have to be innovative, because the marketplaces have seen these tactics over and over and over again, and these strategies implemented more and more and more. So it's difficult. And then I forgot the last thing that I was saying, but basically the idea being that nothing has stopped working, but there are things that work better or worse. And so you asked me what I'm doing. I have my mentorship program. I started it in 2016 because my wife had a brilliant idea and we went with it, right? The idea of a small group, higher end mentorship program that is designed to be intimate and one-on-one and individualized, right? Not like one-on-one as in the students don't know each other, but one-on-one as in they each get individualized attention rather than like some group call with 100 people on it or something like that. This is capturing what I see as a tidal wave trend in the e-learning space. It's funny, I just had a Q&A with the current mentees who are in this mentorship right now, the one that closed on January 28th and is currently going. They asked a similar question. The e-learning industry, as we know it, the multi-billion-dollar thing, is growing, right? More people are coming into it. It is receiving more money. I just finished a project with a client called Teachable, and they have a learning management software service. So it's growing. However, the self-serve online training industry, meaning click a button, get into a membership and buy, or click a button, get an ebook, is declining. Less sales, less people.
Yeah.
So if the e-learning is growing, but self-serve courses are declining, it's because people have noticed one of the fundamental flaws of the industry, which is that self-service courses never get open, logged into, used, or read or implemented. They aren't effective. They don't get the result, And as a result, imagine if Toyota sold cars with the understanding that only 1 in 1,000 cars was actually driven. The cars wouldn't be great. Just by the nature of business, the cars would not be great. They wouldn't feel a moral obligation to make the 999 cars just as good, you know? Yeah. That's what's happening with online training right now. And so for what I'm doing, the mentorship side of things is my answer to this issue of non-usage, non-implementation, not getting the results, because I'm choosing to keep things smaller and more intimate in a very specific niche. I'm training individuals how to be competent, confident copywriters. That's it. Right. And it's hyper specific. It's almost like a trade school. And that is going to continue and rise, and the whole industry is going to get a lot bigger, but you're going to start seeing this backlash against the massive, self-serve course kind of stuff.
Yeah. So rather than the classic sort of $37 ebook and, do nothing with it, or even larger priced courses,
yep,
you're actually providing a hands-on, the trade school concept. I like that experience that really just gets results, rather than just, I'm going to sell 1 million ebooks. I'm going to actually sell, how many sign up at a time? 10, 15?
Yeah. I've had classes between 10 and 25. The sweet spot's about 15.
It's small, it's exclusive, it's premier instruction at a high level, and really just also digging in through the principles, strategies, and tactics, right?
Yep. Yeah. And for and this is, again, going into the tactics, like principle, strategy, tactics, if we dig super deep, for copywriting, you have to do it. You have to write words. And then you have to put those words out to people and see what happens. The problem is, if you write words and put them out to traffic, most of the time you will get no feedback at all, because no one will respond or do anything. And so you just know it didn't work. You don't know why.
Yeah.
That's tough, especially for new people. They're like, I suck at this. I'm done.
Yeah.
So my mentorship is kind of like that safe place where they can put things out and go, okay, this is what you tried. This is what actually happened. Here's how to fix it. Now try again. And keep doing that over and over until you're at a point where you can, confidently go out and do it for other people for money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's all about copywriting. So you don't really teach in traffic strategies there.
Mm-mm. No, there's a portion at the end of the mentorship where if someone wants to be a freelancer, I teach a very specific way of getting clients. But again, that's hyper specific, like just for freelance copywriters.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. One of the questions I had meant to ask you earlier as we were talking about this, where do you get your ideas from? Because clearly, being a good writer is one thing, but, you got to stay current, you got to get ideas, and you got to pull from just a swathe of resources out there, and also not getting confused by all the chatter, right? Where do you pull ideas from?
It's hard to not get confused by chatter when you're actively looking for stuff. So I try to be nice to myself in that regard. And I try to let things kind of pass over the surface if I can. But most of my ideas come from my history in the Army. I'm here in LA and I'm exposed to the film and entertainment industry. So I get to see what they're doing, what they're innovating on versus what they're not doing. I have a lot of contacts up in San Jose, like the tech and Silicon Valley space. And like my wife, in a past life, she's not doing this anymore, but used to be a instructor for a martial art, and she was training law enforcement and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of my ideas have come from the sort of behavioral psychology that comes along with that line of work, and wrapping all that together into what's currently happening in the space. So like Facebook just announced yesterday that they're going to focus more on privacy and potentially start deleting messages after a certain period of time and focusing more and more on privacy. Well, what does that mean? Like for the average consumer, it may be Zuckerberg trying to go for, brownie points. But for marketers, that means it's going to be harder to upload lists, man. It's going to be harder to buy data and get our own custom audiences, and probably have to build an audience that's based on Facebook rather than uploading a custom one that we know. Who knows how that's going to be implemented in the days and weeks and months ahead. But that's the kind of stuff that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And because that's, Facebook's obviously a massive platform. Looking at what the SEC is doing and what kind of cases they're bringing against black hat type marketers. So what not to do or what not even to tread around. The changes in terms of service, like YouTube changing its terms of service constantly to protect against potentially harmful things for children on children's videos. They're demonetizing people's videos or creators' videos on YouTube, meaning no ads are showing on them, due to comments that are occurring in the videos that could potentially be harmful to children. That's huge.
Yeah, that is big.
It shows that these companies are worried about their stewardship of the content that's being produced, which is what's drawing people onto the platform. And for marketers who are spending money on the platforms, that's going to change a lot of how you do business. So principal, strategy, tactics, like you got to know what the tactics are doing in order to implement your strategy and your principles properly. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, you're obviously very current and following up on trends and everything that's happening. I thought it was interesting. There was a huge spread I think it was last week, the Momo figure from Japan.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. YouTube, as you were talking about that, and it's
the viral craze. Yeah. So and that's another big part of marketing in modern times, is this symptom of rapid viral rage or viral sadness or viral happiness, like that kind of thing, right? That can very easily derail a campaign. Like most people forgot about it at this point, but Gillette put out the ad a few weeks ago. Yes. That was regarding, their stance on how men should behave.
Yeah. Saw that.
Huge explosion, right? And some brands took advantage of that for attention. So as a copywriter, it's important to me to stay current. And what I was going to say is I don't really expect other people to have the same level of like wherewithal on everything that's happening. I don't know if you've taken the Colby test, like that Colby personality cognitive test. And if you don't know anything about it, it's totally fine. But basically it told me that I'm a massive researcher. Like innately, the way that I handle problems is research. And so the way I approach learning about the industry and absorbing information may not be right for others. And if everything that we just talked about sounds super overwhelming, the way to fix it is to focus very, very closely on your outcome and what is affecting that outcome. So if you're an agency trying to get clients for yourself, that's an outcome. If your agency is attempting to get an outcome for those clients, that's an outcome. But it's easier when you're more focused.
Yeah, clearly. No, that's awesome. And as we're sort of coming to a close here, this has just been awesome, Lukas. Cool. I would like to have you break down a little bit, which I thought was sort of it's a personal moment, I guess. You said it's okay to be wrong, sort of a big lesson in your life. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's from an emotional, personal standpoint, it's very difficult for me to feel like I'm wrong. I don't like being wrong. I like having the right answer.
Good to be right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also don't, it's not like I have the answer now and that's what it is and I don't believe you. It's more like a frustration that I didn't know the right answer to start with. And so when I find out I'm wrong, I'll go and try and figure out why, or, what I missed, or, how to be right again. So it's less about that cognitive bias of being concrete in your belief and more of like, how did I miss this? Like, I'm too smart to miss this, like that kind of emotional crap.
Right.
And so for me personally, starting and working on being okay with being wrong and then not beating myself up for it was really important. And from a human behavior standpoint, a lot of people have problems being wrong because evolutionarily being wrong meant being dead, or being wrong meant being outcast from your tribe. Yeah. So it's viscerally horrifying to be wrong about something, and we'll defend against that to the point of delusion in order to not be wrong, to feel confident, to feel secure. It's the reason flat Earth exists, Yeah. So, and that's the extreme, right? Like that's not everyone who doesn't believe that they're wrong believes in flat Earth, but this idea of protecting your truth at the expense of not going and learning new things and being more wrong, it has been a journey for me emotionally, but also like when I dug into it and found out it's not just me, it's a lot of people. So in copywriting, it's really important because we are incentivized, and people love to talk about, like we talked about in the beginning of the call, the one shot win, the home run that immediately, made $100 million. But that isn't the reality. That's the exception to the rule. And the rule is typically that you write something, it gets converted a little bit, and then you tweak until it works better. And that's being wrong a lot, and over and over and over and over again, until you eventually reach something that's palatable or usable or ROI positive. And I think that for copywriters specifically, that fear of not getting a home run every time or like getting a bad result is debilitating, especially when they're new. Like no new copywriter wants to bomb their first client. They think they're done forever.
Yeah.
But I always tell the story to my students. The first time I wrote a VSL, I wrote it for free for a friend of mine who was in like a coaching program that, young entrepreneurs were in, right? I wrote it for free. It was kind of tongue in cheek. It was kind of like this is silly, but I still want to sell stuff, VSL. And stupidly, I put it out into the world to get critiqued, like on a Facebook group. And a very well-known copywriter that most people would know if they've studied the space came in and said, "This is the worst piece of copy I have ever read in my life. You should immediately refund any money you took from your client after this and delete this copy and never write copy ever again."
Ouch.
That's what this copywriter said to me, right? And I'm like, well, that's a shitty opinion.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that VSL did result in sales, but not very many because they didn't drive much traffic to it. And I didn't stop. I was okay with being wrong. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to like go blast that VSL to kingdom come because it was a bad VSL, but it doesn't mean I quit, and it doesn't mean I gave up, and it doesn't mean that I felt bad internally for doing something wrong, because I was able to fix my mistakes. I was able to learn and grow, and I was able to like approach everything from the right intent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is actually big because we all deal with this sort of uncertainty about things. I mean, you could be, a superstar, speaker on stage, or a copywriter like yourself, or musician or whatever. And, you're going to get slammed in the face. You're going to hit dirt, right? And how fast you get up is one thing. Of course, are you actually going to power through? Are you going to completely like, dude, I'm out of this game. I'm going to do something different. How much is that hurt happening for you? Just a quick sort of related note. In 2007, I got my first book with Entrepreneur Press or McGraw-Hill at that time. And there was some noted folks in the SEO community that came out and said, "Who's this guy?" And actually called Entrepreneur and said, "This guy's just full of it," And Entrepreneur, they had my back because they knew differently, but it hurt me so much. It took me whole months to get back on the game, and I just sort of trashed myself for not being quote unquote an author, et cetera, et cetera. But realizing that this is going to happen, your confidence is going to be shattered at times. Just get back and power through, and you're just a living proof of that. And it happens with everybody, even professionals like yourself. So it's a good one to keep in mind as a takeaway. And in fact, as we're coming to a close here, Lukas, what should the person do here watching, people watching this and listening? We're going to be on the podcast as well, as you know, and to get started or to inquire more, I put up your website here, and I'm going to also go ahead and flash up the good old website here.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, this is, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm, my name on Facebook and on Instagram and that sort of thing. My website is pretty, cut and dry. If you actually, you're looking at the website right now, over on the upper right-hand side, there's a button called free content.
Yes.
That has my entire first iteration of my mentorship program in there. So the entire copywriting mentorship program that I gave for the first version, we're now on 2.0, for free. It's just there. Anybody can have it. And no opt-in or anything like that. So if you were interested in learning how I thought about copy and wanted to go check that out, please go check that out. If after that, or, as a result of that, you wanted to work together on copywriting, I have a new mentorship program that's going to open up in mid-April. Just reach out to me privately, whether it's through the group or on Facebook or something like that. And we'll see if that's something that, it makes sense for you. Or, maybe you're a person who needs copywriting services. I work with clients. So if you want to talk, let's talk. And that's pretty much it. I don't really have a hard pitch. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And this mentorship, Lukas, is that all happening online, or is it actually in an office somewhere in Los Angeles?
It's all online. Okay. So we have a private Facebook group for students that is specific to that mentorship. So the current class that's going through, it's a very small group. We have a membership site full of content, and then we meet twice a week for a critique on the assignment and for a Q&A. So it's very, back and forth, very high touch. But it's all online. So right now I would say between 35 and 50%, depending on the year, depending on the mentorship, of students are international, non-US. So and they're from all over. I haven't had from every country, but I have had from every continent.
Awesome.
Except Antarctica. Sorry.
Before I ask you parting words, just real quick, where do you see yourself in this game? 24, 36 months out, 2-3 years out, in terms of kind of your own path and where you're sort of planning to see yourself with obviously your servicing clients, you have your mentorship, but just a little bit on that, and then I'm going to come to your parting words here. For sure.
Yeah. I see myself continuing to work with clients because I think that's what keeps the axe sharp. I don't think a person teaching, especially a craft like this, should stop working with clients, or at least stop doing the actual craft and just start the teaching. I don't like that personally. I've changed a lot about how I've taught even in the last 3 years, from 2016 to 2019. And so I still see myself working with clients, but probably, at a less and less volume, more and more quality, higher level with those clients. And expanding this mentorship. I believe that there is a gap in the marketplace for helping people go from scratch to confident and competent as a copywriter. And there is a extraordinary lack of good copywriters at that level. I hear from business owners every week, multiple times a week, that they are looking for good junior writers, either to work in-house or remote. They need good copywriters to work on different projects at scale. It's a massive need right now, but there is absolutely nothing in the marketplace that serves the needs of creating those junior writers. And so I do see myself expanding the mentorship to the extent that I can, while maintaining the quality that I currently have. We didn't discuss it on this call, but I have an 86% completion rate of the program, 100% satisfaction rate, and almost 50 to 60% of the students who've completed the program are either currently actively freelancing, full or part-time, working in-house at a company, or working remote for a company as a copywriter. And the other percentage of that were business owners who took the program to learn how to write copy and hire copywriters. So it is, to my knowledge, based on public information, the most successful copywriting training program available on the marketplace by percentage, not by numbers. Because there's people who train thousands, and those people have done incredible work, but by percentage and by results, it's the most effective. And so I see myself expanding that, because it's a service that is required and that people are really enjoying.
What's the youngest age you take into your mentorship?
I don't have any age brackets. I've got people who are a lot older, people who are younger. Got some guys who decided to go with me instead of go to graduate school. So it's some students actually who are currently in college. I'm not positive, but I think the youngest I've gone is probably 18 or 19.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my daughter's 15, so it's probably a little too young, but that'd be interesting.
Send her over. I'm sure she'll learn. She'll probably know a lot more about the up and coming mediums that copywriting can be applied to. So like if she's on TikTok, or if she's on, that kind of stuff, then she would probably know a lot of that.
That's cool. That's good to know. Yeah, that's awesome. Lukas, any parting words, tips, insights? We've covered a lot here today. It's just been awesome. So, but the classic Steve Jobs, just one more thing,
Yeah. Well, so you asked this question and I prepared for it, but our conversation took a little bit of a different angle. So it might be a surprise, but I would say that the biggest takeaway that I would give is from the perspective of a copywriter out to people who either want to learn copy or use copy or grow their business or be marketers or whatever, whatever you are in listening to this, the biggest opportunity that you have is understanding your audience the best out of every one of your competitors. That's your competitive advantage. And I don't mean like sort of knowing or like having good demographic data on your Facebook page. I mean truly deeply knowing your target market the best out of all of your customers or all of your competition. Because I believe in today's day and age, knowing your customer the best is the thing that won't change as fast as the rest of this tech. So if you know your customer the best and you know that they are fleeing Facebook and going to LinkedIn because they're tired of the politics on Facebook, then you know to go to LinkedIn. Yeah. You wouldn't know that if all you were doing was following your numbers on your page and watching it slowly decline. And so I think it's a competitive advantage to know your audience. I'm very deep into research, but I am into verifying that research and keeping it constant and current.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. That's my insight, I guess, from the copywriter.
Yeah. And also, I know you mentioned that today, luckily, through technology and just many multiple ways of research now, which actually probably would be another podcast, but you can get to that data. And although it's not finite, it's a way for you to really hone your messaging and your positioning and your offer structures and everything that ties into it. I know that gets into more the tactical side, but it really starts with that. And it's I think something that I know I hear this in the marketplace and I talk to clients as well. But, you just reminded us all here. I think that, you really need to take that one right there to the next level. So this has just been extraordinary, Lukas. Really just wisdom at times 100 here.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I appreciate you coming on today, and of course anybody here who wants to know more about Lukas and from a service perspective to the mentorship. I'm going to spell this out because Resheske is the pronunciation, but it's Lukas Resheske. I wanted to get that right. .com.
Yep.
And you should go there right now and just connect out with Lukas and also just the free content. Just I had seen that actually, and I think it just looks awesome. So invite everybody to go and take a look at that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, likewise, Lukas, and we'll see you soon. And we're going to cut this now and enjoy everybody. And we'll be back tomorrow with another podcast.
Have a good one.
Guys, see ya.